My name is Manuel, and I'm originally from New York City, New York. I currently reside, um, well, during vacations in Seward, Alaska. I work and live in Alaska. I was born and raised in Alaska, then moved to San Francisco, and then moved back to New York, and then I kind of realized that New York wasn't really the most optimal environment for a guy like me to live in. So I just decided to move out to Alaska, and I've been working in the culinary industry since then, while pursuing my educational studies in medicine and health and Middle Eastern studies as well. So, my mother practiced Santeria for probably about 20 years, prior to my birth. And Santeria is a sub-denomination of Christianity. Well, let me rephrase. Santeria is kind of like a form of mysticism. There's a lot of concepts to. There's voodoo in there. There's black magic. There's white magic. So it's like Wicca and Christianity mixed up, and it's predominantly in the Caribbean, Puerto Rico, Jamaica, Cuba. So there's a small following, and then my mother converted to Pentecostalism just after I was born. My father, I don't know him. He pretty much left when I was 4 years old. He was extremely abusive, and I didn't hear about him until about 2009 when I did some research on him, and he passed away in 2004. So I really wasn't able to kind of like build or even know him. So I grew up with my mom until the age of 8, and even before that, I was pretty much in and out of the hospital, mental hospital, psychiatric ward, group homes. And then my mom just got really, really sick. And because of that, she had to submit me to the state. And the state overtook responsibility for my well-being until I turned 17. It was just, Alaska wasn't even on my mind. I was in high school, I was in a group home. I was dealing with a lot of issues there. And just discovering myself and trying to learn who I am as a person during high school was really difficult, well, especially being in the group home. Being in foster care, you deal with a strict, structured environment where there's no nurturing whatsoever. These people that come in for their shifts to take care of you, not your parents, they're not your moms, they're not your dads. So the influence of that dynamic between parent and child was non-existent in my life the majority of my childhood. It was sir, ma'am, Mr. this, Mrs. this. From a young age, we learned how to fight for our own. We were able to learn how to cook, do laundry, budget, probably by the age of 10, 11, 12 years old. And a lot of people, on TV might not know this, but that's, while, normal kids will have their mommies and daddies and celebrate Eid and Ramadan, we were just, we'll spend our Saturdays and Sundays either studying, doing homework or taking independent living skills. And that was pretty much the structure then. We pretty much lived everything by a schedule from 6 in the morning to 9 at night. And another main focus of that was church. When I was placed in foster care, I was placed in an agency that was run by the Catholic Church. So as a child living in that agency, I had to practice Catholicism. Now, I had no idea what Christianity was until I began practicing Catholicism, obviously against my will. So I was baptized at age 12, confirmed by 14, and pretty much active in the church from 14 and up. And at the same time, I would go to Mass on Sundays, and I wasn't interested at all. The whole concept of the Trinity didn't really appeal to me at all. This thing about, one thing that kind of like made me question the whole thing on Christianity was the story of the fig tree. Was the story of when Isa, the son of Mary, may peace and blessings be upon him, was traveling with one of his companions, and they were hungry. So he thought, okay, let's go to a fig tree. Let's go and find some fruit. So he found the fig tree, but there was no fruit. So if Isa was God and he was all-knowing, how did he not know that the fig tree didn't have fruit? It was obviously out of season. And that started breaking my faith completely. And I became pretty much an atheist. Denounced my faith at 17 and ran away. San Francisco, I pretty much had whatever money I had in my pocket and traveled. Tried going to college a couple of times, dropped out. It was just something that I couldn't comprehend, because I was just lost completely. After high school, which I did very poorly in, I just didn't know what to do. So I tried going to school for human services to see maybe if I can just become a social worker and help former foster children like me. And it didn't really, pan out the way I wanted to be, panned out. So, after a couple of tries in university, tried art school, but I realized I was a better pothead than a better artist. I decided just go out and, take a trade and learn, and just try to develop. So I worked as an EMT for a little bit, was trained and did that, and got bored of it, and just wandered off and tried to find myself. There are things that I wasn't really proud of. I really didn't have much communication with my mom either during that time. It was just, I wasn't focused on family or anything like that, because in reality, I really didn't feel like I had family. Like I really was just alone in myself. And being in that situation and realizing that concept of self-realization kind of made me think, like, it just almost further just deepened that hole that I had, that pure disbelief. You understand what I'm saying? So I just kept searching. I never stopped looking. There are moments that I took pauses, whether dealing with work or hanging out, carousing with women or smoking lots of marijuana and drinking. It was just, I wasn't looking. But when the money went away and the friends went away, you couldn't buy any pot or any alcohol and you pretty much broke, kind of realized when you have no one, you pretty much have to search your own way, And I kind of felt like Allah was with me the whole time, just further realizing it, thinking about it now. So when I'm not going to give you the details on how I reverted, because it's just way too painful for me to kind of like relive that, because, I'm still a little bit emotional about it. But I met a brother, and he was a Sunni brother, but he was very tolerant of all denominations, and I was extremely Islamophobic, growing up in New York and growing up Catholic and being in foster care and having the biased views of staff members who would often work there. You just don't get enough perspective. And there's a lot of indoctrination with that. So when you're indoctrinated, you're absolutely and utterly brainwashed. So I pretty much grew up hating Muslims, and that's all I knew. Before that, I didn't know what Islam was. I didn't know what Muslims are. From 2001 on, I thought Muslims were just a hate cult filled with ignorance and wanting to rape everyone and kill everyone, this and this and that. Like, I was genuinely fearful for my life. And, meeting this guy, I hated him. I genuinely hated him. And, to this day, still don't understand why, like, how can I hate someone that was really good to me from the get-go, So, after, you know, working with him, because I was working with him, and was kind of forced to work with him because the captain kind of knew I was a huge Islamophobe, and he was like, listen, you can not have a job or work with him. So that's how things began breaking, and he slowly creeped in, you know, sneaky. And, you know, he started talking to me. He literally asked me, why do you hate me? I couldn't answer him. I couldn't give him an answer. Because in reality, hate and ignorance is what you don't know. You can't hate something that you do know. You cannot like something that you do know, but you can't physically hate what you don't know. Hate and ignorance only comes from lack of knowledge. You understand? And that's what I begin to live by. So I kind of realized, like, maybe I should give him a chance, hear his story. And we slowly became friends, and you know, he gave me my first Quran. You know, he gave me my first kufi. He gave me my first, you know, prayer rug. And I wasn't even thinking about taking shahada, but just having it, you know, knowing that, it just kind of built more and more and more, just more hunger, you know. So we were at work, and we was heading to an emergency, and unfortunately, you know, we got in an accident and he died, and it was really bad. So I wasn't able to, you know, really reach to janazah and stuff like that. I was able to mourn and grieve. And to this day, I still grieve because, you know, he was a friend. You know, he was probably one of the only people that actually cared. You know, he taught me a lot about what Islam is and, you know, what it's supposed to be. You know, we really didn't follow any denomination or anything like that. I remember one Jummah we'll go to ICCSF, which is the Islamic Center of San Francisco, and then we'll go to another masjid that's just outside by Berkeley, where it's a Shiite mosque, and then we'll go and we'll hang out with some Sufi sisters like the next Friday, and we'll just, like, I was able to kind of grasp, you know, a conglomerate of knowledge from all the other denominations, and it just made my belief that Islam can be so beautiful and so fluid, but yet so tight and firm. And that kind of like what lured me to Islam. And unfortunately, he passed away, and I really never got a chance to say goodbye, so I grieved. I grieved for a long, long time. I wasn't really thinking about Islam after that. It just really, just having someone that really had a profound effect on me, you know, his kindness, his generosity, it bothered me that, you know, this man who was only 23 years old, was 2 years older than me, you know, at the time, and to be gone away so abruptly. And it, to this day, it hurts. It hurts a lot, because taking what I learned and trying to apply it now, and seeing the state of the Ummah now, it makes me weep inside to see the state of the Ummah now. And I kind of guess that was just like my most deepest moment in Islam. Just that pivotal moment from the death of my friend to the moment I took Shahada. And I remember it was August the 17th, 2009. I remember that day pretty well. I was in bad condition. I was injured pretty bad, and kind of rolled up my little wheelchair to the masjid, and I was like, hey, can I speak to the sheikh? You know, this ain't handicap accessible. So there was two brothers that was trying to carry me, and I'm like, you know, I'm a wide load, you know, I'm a big dude, I'm a big brother, come on. You know, you're gonna need like a tow or something like that, or a lorry crane or something like that. And they started laughing, and it was pretty heartwarming. And then, you know, they was like, hey, you know, what are you here? I'm like, why can I not be here? I just want to sleep. No, I'm joking. You know, I want to take Shahada. And it's like, what? Oh, alhamdulillah, you know. They gave me a hug, and you know, my ribs were broken at the time, and he's like, no, just that hurts. It's like, oh, okay. So I took shahada that day, and then I don't know, it's just things became, you know, that's when the jihad al-nafs started, you know, that struggle, that pure struggle. Because once I became Muslim, nothing else really mattered to me. I just wanted to please Allah without any limitations. And that angered a lot of people in my family, angered almost all my friends. And I became completely alienated and marginalized. My mother disowned me. Both my sisters decided not to talk to me. And it took years. It took years for them to come to grips. I lost many friends. You know, I remember one friend of mine, you know, I told him, you know, I'm searching for my peace, you know. I'm searching for that, you know, a way to please Allah and just search. That's why I became Muslim. And he's like, you sure it's not for the 72 virgins? And I thought that was the most disgusting, asinine thing that he can ever say. And he's like, don't become a terrorist. I'm like, what? Like, are you seriously like telling me these things? Like, he's like, no, I'm joking. I'm like, don't be such a hard ass. I'm like, no, that's disrespectful. Because you're a Mormon. I don't disrespect you about how you believe that if you do good and you believe, you know, you die, you become a god. Like, I don't question you that, you know, with that, because to be honest, there's only one God. So how are you a god? Are you a lesser god? So therefore you're a demigod. Therefore you're not even a god. You know, like, I completely destroyed his whole argument on LDS in that minute, and he pretty much was like, screw you. And I had to learn how to calm my anger. Allah grant me lots and lots of sabr, you know, just dealing with my mother, you know. And when I was disowned, I was living with my mom in New York. And with the fact that I was being disowned, I was pretty much kicked out of the house. I was homeless. And I tried to seek refuge in the masjid. And I became alienated in the masjid as well. And these are things that we hear way too common. This is, you know, we are a country, you know, the United States has about approximately 8 million Muslims. And in New York City is the largest population of Muslims in any part of the U.S., second to Dearborn, Michigan. So you're talking about over 1 million Muslims living within the New York metropolitan area. And I became marginalized. And it shook my iman, like, deep. Like, I was almost at the point of committing apostasy. And even thinking about it now scares me. I never want to disbelieve, because look at everything here. Look at the simplicity of this rug and the complexity of these designs here. You know, someone who made this made it, you know, for whatever reason. That's just thinking about that is Allah. Thinking about every small thing from an ant to a sperm whale. That's God. That's not physically God, but that's His creation. You know, so it's impossible for me to not believe in Allah. I can't, you know, because I've seen it. You know, I've seen all the good in Allah's mercy, you know, despite all that jihad that I went through. And it just strengthened it eventually strengthened my faith, you know, just being marginalized by the community. I focused more on salat. I focused more on just learning Islam, learning how to properly do salat, and learning dhikr, you know, and trying to learn Arabic. Horrible still. I'm getting it. I'm able to read letters now, alhamdulillah. So after losing my friends, after losing pretty much my family, and pretty much being by myself, I decided to find my niche online. So I started blogging about my experiences and blogging about what I've learned in the Quran and the Ahadith, Sunnah Ahadith and the Shia Ahadith, and trying to take what I incorporated and try to help people with it, you know. And the blog is Making a Mu'min at WordPress. If anyone wants to read it, I mean, it's pretty much brand new now because I pretty much got rid of all the articles, old articles, because some of the stuff is inaccurate. But and people from Facebook started adding me, you know. Some of these people became lifelong friends, and I met a brother who is Shia, and we started having these debates and these conversations, you know, about the different denominations, about, you know, Sunni, Shiite, you know, stuff like that. And I'm more sympathetic to a lot of the minority groups, like the Shiite, the Sufi, you know, the Bathra, you know, the Quranis, because just because they have their own set of ritualism doesn't mean that they're not Muslim. When you're Muslim, you take Shahada, you follow those pillars. Those pillars are what quintessentially makes you a Muslim. And the Usul-ud-Din is one of the most important facets, the foci of Islam. You know, the root, Usul, the root. You know, and the great thing about it was Maulana Baig, you know, he taught me so much about that whole focus, that whole thing, the Usul-ud-Din. You know, it's okay for you to, you know, to worry about, you know, have self-doubt, because that just only strengthens your Usul-ud-Din, you know. So let me go back to Brother Mansour. He was just like, hey, you know, have you considered just taking the deen to another step, you know, taking it to another level? And I'm like, of course, you know. He's like, why won't you consider getting into a seminary? So I began applying, you know. I didn't hear about IAS till a few months ago. And even though it's a Shiite school, you know, I'm going to apply, you know. Allah even said, you know, Rasulullah said himself, you know, seek knowledge, even if it's in, you know, China, you know. And that's one of the things you know, that kind of like lured me. I applied to some Darul Ulooms, I applied to Medina, I applied to some other programs and stuff like that. I only got into like 3 places, all houses. I got into Hussein, I think. No. Well, I don't remember. At least I got accepted here, obviously. So at the time where I got had my interview, I was in Alaska. I was working as a sous chef, and yeah, and that's all those years of cooking in the group home kind of paid off. So you know, I was working at a restaurant in Seward, Alaska, which I still kind of live to this day. And Sheikh Ali was like, hey, how is your Arabic? And I was like, how is my Arabic? It's horrible. He's like, okay, well, that's going to be your jihad al-nafs for this year. Just pack up your bags and hurry up and get here. I'm like, okay. So I'm here now, and, you know, that pretty much is, you know, that I don't really consider everything from before the Shahada as my journey. You know, last Monday was the beginning of my journey. The moment that I got from the Sanford airport was the beginning of my journey, because I just started picking up Arabic. I just picked the marja to do taklif to, you know. And I'm really focusing on aqaid and, you know, the theology of Islam, and, you know, and how to properly implement it, and not only implement it, but to teach it and to ensure that others can properly implement it. And alhamdulillah for the seminary, because 4 years time I'll become an imam, and I want to take that to that step, and inshallah I'll become a sheikh, and just dedicate my entire life to the study, the promotion, and the deepening of Islam as the faith, the way of life, the way of all ways. You understand? So, boom, that's my start. That's me. Now, you can't go up when you're down, right? And when you're up and you're down, the only way you can move up, the only way you can move is up, right? So, of course my faith was shaken, but there were moments of self-actualization and self-realization that were pivotal into my strengthening of my deen, of my iman. And there were people here and there that came around, alhamdulillah to them, for them, that kind of strengthened me, whether it's a couple of words or whatever, it was their form of charity or them offering me a position or, talking to me, just making sure I was okay. That kind of solidified my belief in Islam and the goodness and the righteousness of what Allah has taught us. So it just brought me closer to Allah. And it just made me more dedicated to follow the rules of what Allah has given down to Rasulullah, peace and blessings be upon him. As I explained, being disowned by my family, and I tried to seek refuge in the masjid. And while I was trying to seek refuge in the masjid, I became completely alienated from that community because of their views of what a revert is, their lack of understanding, and the adulteration of Islam, their Islam, through their own cultures and castes and whatever they believed in. And I had to have sabr. I prayed. I didn't pray for shifa. I prayed more for sabr, because if you don't have patience, you're gonna implode. And if you implode, you're gonna eventually leave Islam. Now I'm gonna quote a statistic, and it's a very troubling statistic. And the statistic is current as last year. Over 70% of reverts that enter Islam, they leave within 3 years. The number one reason is because of that alienation. So that, to be alienated by the community, was one challenge that I still face. I mean, before I went to Alaska, I went and made salat at a masjid in New York. And I remember just getting weird looks. Not only just weird looks, but it's obvious I can hear what you're saying, I had people just starting, who's this kufr, who's this munafiq? I'm like, who gives you the right to call someone a disbeliever? I could be half naked and you still have no right to call me a disbeliever. And it's something that really bothered me. And it bothers me now because it affects my brothers and sisters. It affects the people that I attend school with. Just recently, I remember we went to this halal pizzeria on Sunday. And my brother said salam alaikum to this family, all Muslim, most likely born into Islam. And they just looked at him, like with a snarl in their face. And it didn't bother him because his level of deen is really deep. So that's like how you call it? I'm trying to think of the term. It's basically when someone commits fitna against you, you get the rewards from Allah. And the sin that they commit against you goes back to them and they have to answer for. Like that, hasadat, right? Hasad, yeah. So, he had that. It still bothered me. I approached them. I didn't say anything, but I made sure they heard my salams. So I made sure that my salams was loud and current. I was like, salam alaikum itallahi wa barakatuh wa rahmatu Allah wa fikum, just threw it out there. And they looked at me and they kind of knew. They knew. And even though it was kind of against of what I believe in, sometimes you have to tell people the truth, regardless of how much it hurts. Sometimes you're going to have to be a little loud and speak out because, that's what Rasulullah did. He spoke out against injustice. When something was wrong, he not only said something about it, but he did something about it, and that's all why I'm here. I want to become part of the solution. I don't want to become the problem. I don't want to become part of the problem. I want to be able to do khutbah and explain to people, how to properly implement Islam. And not only that, but to help give people more iman, Because sometimes you're in masjid and you're feeling down. Even though you do wudu and you still have the nikat, the intention to make salat. But there's that small place in your heart that you feel lost. And I want to be at that moment where they're listening to me and try to give them a little piece of my life, a little piece of my soul there, and just hopefully inspire them, to just live their day and just to keep on trucking, Basically, I was going to come 10 days early because I wanted to, because Sheikh Ali was going to personally tutor me for 10 days to, better deepen my understanding of Arabic. So the first week I can understand Sarf and Naha, so I was able to get standby. But I have a thing where I could be impulsive with money and, come on, everyone has their faults. My fault is money. Like, if I have $100 in my pocket and I see an MP3 player and I know I have one at home, I'm going to want that. And I'm going to probably get it. So I took all my IDs and my passport and, stuff like that, my money, which was all my summer's earnings, about $4,000. I placed it into a secret compartment in my hiking pack. It's a huge pack. It's like 65 liters. It's huge. So I thought no one was going to get to it. I was wrong. I was so wrong. Still upsets me. I mean, it doesn't upset me. It's just like, subhanallah, just one of those moments. So we took 3 stops. We was in Whittier, which was pretty far out from Anchorage. Then we got to Gridwood, and then eventually Anchorage. Those stops, I had to go and use the bathroom or get myself a Gatorade and a cheeseburger, or kind of stretch out my legs so I don't have to die from deep vein thrombosis. So while I was out, the driver was still in the front in the car, in the bus. So, it was in and out. We were out for a long time. It was like 15 minutes each, break. So I would make the assumption that it's enough time. I'm not going to say if the driver stole it, but whoever stole it, may Allah grant them shifa, because to have that urge to steal, that's a sickness. So may Allah grant them the cure for that, because that's a really bad disease to have, So I got to the airport and I was like, hey, I can get on standby. He's like, yeah, we could get you a flight by tonight. Just you got to pay like $250. I'm like, okay, great, that's awesome. Hold on one second. Went to my pack. Gone. Everything was gone. Everything. ID, passport, social security, birth certificate, school ID from university, my insurance card, my, I had a little keychain thing from Costco because, brother loves some food. And I wasn't even upset about the passport. I was upset about the Costco card. I was just more, I'm like, oh man, I can't get the Kirkland chicken salad. That was so cheap. No, I'm joking. I was really upset about the passport. So, I explained to her the situation. She's like, what are you going to do? I'm like, can you please call the police? Because my stuff has been stolen. And just back and forth for like an hour and a half, and nothing came to fruition out of that. I called the Anchorage police. They didn't want to file a report. I called the Anchorage airport police. They didn't want to file a report. Called state troopers. They didn't want to file a report. Called the bus lines. They didn't want to do anything about it. They pretty much said, what are you talking about? So I was stranded at a hostel in Anchorage for a while. And yeah. A brother of mine, a Christian brother of mine, a real good friend of mine, Nathaniel Boomer, he's like, hey, what's up? I'm like, nothing. It's like, I heard about what happened on Facebook. I'm like, yeah, so what about it? He's like, you can stay with me in Palmer, right? And I'm like, no. He's like, shut up. I'm picking you up in 40 minutes. Like, you don't even know where I'm at. It's like, I know where you're at. There's only one hostel in Anchorage. Shut up. Just take it. So about 6 hours later, he finally shows up. And, I stayed in Palmer for the whole time. Tried working, to get enough capital to get the things I need, my laptop, some books, a new thobe, because I really needed a thobe, because women just love the figure, and I kind of have to maintain it. So I worked, and it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough for me to get a new ticket, because by the time I was able to get the paycheck, it was just, the expiration date was set. So like, I just paid a whole bunch of money for that ticket that I no longer use. Now I need to get a new ticket, and pretty much I'm stranded. So I got the GoFundMe, and Brother Zach was able to help me out, raise enough funds for me to get a ticket, and someone actually bought me a ticket, like a random dude. Just was like, hey, listen, I got enough miles on my card, I'll get you a one-way ticket from Anchorage to MCO. I'm like, word? Alhamdulillah. He's like, don't worry, thank me later. Just make dua for me, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, say no more, And, the money I used to get myself a basic laptop, something decent and cheap. And some basic necessities. And, like, the money came rolling in on Friday. I left on Saturday. And I got here Saturday night, sweaty, because just, cold weather, versus the humid, and just, I don't know how people live in this state. I mean, one, it's just swamp, and then it's boiling hot. Seriously, like, you can cook an egg under here. Just, I'm seriously, I can get a little bit of oil and make falafel. Like, right on the ground. I mean, I don't know, it might be najis, but like, you can still make falafel on the ground. So like, and here I am.